What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Week 10 Dynasty Lessons Learned video. I apologize I did not get one out last week. I completely underestimated how long it takes to do full rankings videos for all four positions last week. So I do apologize for not having one at all last week and not having a full one back in Week 8. But we're back with a full Week 10 Dynasty Lessons Learned. Every single game, every single team. More or less every single team. Some of the games are kind of crap, but we're back. We're back into it with Week 10 Dynasty Lessons Learned. Starting first with the Bengals and the Ravens. Fantastic Thursday night game. On the Bengals side of the ball, I'm looking at Chase Brown. He had 24.5 PPR points, 12 carries for 42 yards and a touchdown, 9 receptions for 52 yards. Absolutely phenomenal production, basically, and phenomenal usage as well. Second straight game with over 20 touches. Basically, ever since Zach Moss left, Chase Brown has been a bell cow running back for the Bengals. 26 and a half PPR points back in Week 9 as well, too. And honestly, this is really fun because I was really high on Chase Brown coming out of college. I don't really know why I didn't stick with Chase Brown, with loving Chase Brown coming into this year, because I was so high on him coming out of college in 2023. He was my auto third round pick, was even like a late second for me. Like, if you guys know how much I love Ray Davis, I love Chase Brown probably a little bit more than Ray Davis this year. I just don't know why that didn't extend into 2024. Maybe it was because I just believe that Zach Moss was slightly better. Maybe I saw other people talk me out of it. Not really sure. I will say, though, as much as it's been fun to watch Chase Brown and as good as he's been, I still don't know if he's going to be the starter in 2024 or 2025. I would like to think that he is, especially with the way that the Bengals are kind of building out their team, especially with the way their cap space is going too. They're going to have to pay Jamar Chase. Joe Burrow is getting massively paid right now. And their defense and some of their acquisitions over there too will need or will continue to need to get paid. That I think that Chase Brown is safe for next year. I'm not entirely sure though, but at least for the end of 2024, he's a nice RB2 for contenders. I don't think I would go out and actively buy him right now. But if you already have him, I would hold on to him. I'm not really looking to sell him, but I'm not really looking to go out and like buy Chase Brown. I also think it'd probably be a little bit harder to buy Chase Brown too, just because of how good he's been over the past couple of weeks. I mean, if you can buy him for a second, you're a late second as a contender. That's probably a good buy point for me right now. But I feel like most people probably want more than that if they're selling Chase Brown. But a good hold as of right now. On the Ravens side of the ball, Mark Andrews, man, 18.8 PPR points, 6 for 68 and a touchdown, 7 targets for a 21% target share. He's had 14 or more fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 weeks. And I would like to officially declare that Mark Andrews is back. Congratulations to everybody that stuck through it and held on to Mark Andrews and he didn't sell during the dark days back earlier in the year. Congratulations to everybody who bought super low during those dark days. I had people reach out to me and tell me they bought Mark Andrews for a 25 third, Mark Andrews for like a super late second. You know, there were some ridiculous buy low trades that I saw with Mark Andrews earlier in the year that if people just, had held on, had a little bit of patience, congratulations to those of you that had patience. These were the rewards that you could have reaped with Mark Andrews returning to form basically from the injury that he sustained at the end of the year. He's a tight end 8 on the year, which may or may not be indicative of how bad tight ends have been this year. But he's a tight end 3 since week 6. So I think that, I did my tight end rankings videos last week. I had Mark Andrews kind of down in like the tight end 10 area. I would like to say that I want to bump Mark Andrews back up into the top 5 or top 6 range, basically right where George Kittle was as a tier 3 tight end. Because I think that he is returning to form right now. We'll probably have a really good end of year for 2024, and we'll probably be right back into the conversation as an elite every week starter at the position next year in 2025, fully healthy, fully into this offense from day one, and I'm excited for it. I'm excited for Mark Andrews as somebody who tried to be patient through the dark days and try to tell everybody to be patient through the dark days. We're here now. He is officially back. It is very fun. Giants and Panthers game, the Germany game as well. By the way, if you don't like watch Xavier Legette's interviews and stuff, he is hilarious. Please go watch interviews was able to get, especially around the Germany stuff. I think he tried some like food that he had in Germany. Basically, he was talking about before he even left for Germany what he was eating, and the way that he pronounces asparagus is really really funny. But he's a funny dude. If you don't know what I'm talking about, search up those videos. Anyway, on the Giant side of the ball, Tyrone Tracy is who we should be talking about here. Kind of very similar to Chase Brown. Hasn't been as elite, I think, in terms of like peak weeks over the past couple of weeks, but has been very, very good basically over his last 6 games. He had 15 and a half PPR points this week, 100 yards and a touchdown, 1 catch for 1 yard. He's had 100 more total yards in 4 of his last 6 games, basically since the beginning of October when he took over the backfield for an injured Devin Singletary. And then when Singletary came back, Tracy did not let go of the starting role. He's been very, very good. I have this on here, I fear that he is Dameon Pierce 2.0. Tracy is definitely better than Dameon Pierce. I want that to be known out there, that me comparing him to Dameon Pierce is not an indictment on Tyrone Tracy talent. What it is to me, or my fear for Tyrone Tracy that may or may not be realized, is that he is a day 3 pick on a really bad team right now who need a lot of things in and around, their entire offense to make them better. Which was kind of the same argument for Dameon Pierce. Why would the Texans invest into the running back position whenever they, they needed a quarterback, they needed more wide receivers, they needed offensive line, blah, 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 blah. But Dameon Pierce was not a pass catcher. Tyrone Tracy, not really a pass catcher either. He had that one game that he had 6 receptions, but other than that, he's had basically 1 or 2 receptions every other week. And he's also turning 25 in 10 days. I don't know if people realize that because he's a rookie. He was an extremely old rookie. He will be 25 years old on November 23rd. And that's not fantastic for Dynasty either. So I don't know if the longevity is there for Tyrone Tracy. I don't know if basically that's it. I don't know if the longevity is there due to age, due to situation, due to draft capital. I am fearful of Tyrone Tracy. I don't think he's an active sell, like an immediate sell right now, but I am definitely not going out to buy Tyrone Tracy. And I think that he's a hold if you are a contender. I would rather have Chase Brown than Tyrone Tracy because I believe there's more longevity with Chase Brown than there is Tyrone Tracy, but there's a lot of similarities there. But I think Chase Brown is just better. He's much more involved in the passing game as well. I think he's made himself a little bit more integral into the Bengals offense than Tracy has been into the Giants offense, especially with so much change about to happen for the Giants. I don't know if Tracy keeps up with that change or if he's kind of left behind and was just this fun guy that we talk about in 10 years. Remember Tyrone Tracy? That's my fear with him and why I'm a little bit hands off with him when it comes to buying him. On the flip side, on the Panthers side, Jonathan Brooks, a running back that I do want to buy. Of course, I dropped all those rankings videos last week, and not but like 24 or 48 hours after I dropped the running back rankings video, Chuba Hubbard gets his extension, which then probably drops Jonathan Brooks' dynasty value. I've gotten a ton of questions about what to do with Jonathan Brooks right now. And I would agree that he has lost dynasty value. I think from a dynasty standpoint, I had him as a dynasty RB1 because of the talent, because of the draft capital, because of the situation that he can come into whenever he does take over for Chuba Hubbard. Chuba's been fantastic in this offense. I think Jonathan Brooks is better than Chuba, so I think he would do even better than Chuba in this offense with the workload that Chuba has already been getting. But I do think that he's lost dynasty value because he still hasn't played yet, and Chuba's going to be in the way a little bit longer. But just because of that, I would not be looking to sell Jonathan Brooks. I think now is a really bad time to sell Jonathan Brooks, and I would actually keep buying him. Chuba's extension, if you actually looked at the details, is a 4-year deal on paper, but it's essentially a 1-year deal that he's going to be on the team for sure in 2025. But then starting in 2026, he becomes a cut candidate. So it's essentially a 1-year deal with 3 team options on whether or not they want to keep Chuba Hubbard. In 2026, I think his cap hits like $7 million, but his dead cap's like $3.5 million. Then in 2027, that only gets worse. In 2028, he's not going to be on the team, I don't think, by 2027. If he's even on the team in 2026. So I am very much in the belief that Jonathan Brooks is their running back of the future as they continue to go. And it's just about him getting healthy, getting more integrated in the offense. And I thought that was going to happen by the end of 2024. It still might, But now it might happen in 2025 where he might start taking over for Chuba Hubbard. And then once we get into 2026, then that is when Jonathan Brooks really, really takes over. So I'm still actively buying Jonathan Brooks for Dynasty. Don't sell him. But he has lost some value. But I think that only means that you can get him for cheaper when you're trading for him. Broncos and Chiefs game now. On the Broncos side of the ball, we got to talk about Bo Nix. 16 PPR points this week against the Chiefs, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, -5 rushing yards. He did not run at all this week. And now I'm starting to wonder if he's actually good. Is Bo Nix actually kind of a good quarterback? We have seen a very noticeable improvement basically from September over to the last month or so. Weeks 1 through 4, he averaged 165 yards per game, 0.3 touchdowns, averaged 1 interception per game, and 4.7 yards per attempt. Weeks 5 through 10, he's averaging 218 passing yards, 1.5 passing touchdowns, 0.3 interceptions, and 7 yards per attempt. He's also rushed for 30 plus yards in half of his games played, has 4 rushing touchdowns. I kind of think I'm buying into Bo Nix, guys. I think that he has shown enough in the situation that he's in that it's essentially just throwing to Cortland Sutton and Devon Vele, and he doesn't really have much of a run game. It's very inconsistent run game. And Troy Franklin hasn't really done anything. Marvin Mims is not anything. It's basically just Cortland Sutton. And yet Bo Nix is doing really well. He's basically, I think, like a lighter version of what Drake May is right now. Drake May is getting all the hype because he's doing really well with no weapons in New England. I think Bo Nix should also be getting similar hype because he's doing really well with really no weapons, and also has a similar rushing upside that I think we need to start buying into Bo Nix as a dynasty QB2 with QB1 upside. Because imagine what would happen if Bo Nix actually does get more weapons. What if they go out and they sign T. Higgins? What if they draft another wide receiver in next year's class? There is a lot of upside for Bo Nix for fantasy with the passing production that he's already shown that he's been capable of for the past 5 weeks, plus the rushing upside that he has. And if you add another weapon into that equation, it could be even better for him. So I think Bo Nix is a buy right now and might actually be a good quarterback. I wouldn't say that he's going to turn into like a great quarterback, but I wouldn't be shocked if he was, like Andy Dalton very early on in his career, that he had that longevity. If he was Derek Carr and kind of has that longevity, I think that he's better than a lot of the other quarterbacks that have kind of, been drafted in the first round and kind of come up but they didn't really have all that much talent, or they weren't all that good. And so they didn't get a second contract like Mitch Trubisky or anybody like that. I think Bo Nix is better than that. And I think could have a lot more longevity and maybe could develop into Phillip Rivers or somebody like that. Like that could be Bo Nix's upside. Maybe he's just Carson Wentz. Who knows? That could be fine too. But at least for the next 3-4 years, I think Bo Nix is fine. And I would be looking to buy into him as a QB2. On the Chiefs side of the ball, Kareem Hunt, only 10 PPR points this week. A lot of that. How do you only have 10 PPR points when he should definitely have more than, I think that's 10 standard points. So he had 17 PPR points this week. I looked at the wrong column. He had 10 standard points, 17 PPR points because of the 7 receptions. From that, I think it's time to sell. It's time to sell Kareem Hunt. He's been amazing for fantasy football since he took over for Isaiah Pacheco. If you picked him up off of waiver wires, especially as a contender, congratulations. He's been the RB7 in points per game since week 4. He's been phenomenal for you as a win now piece, but I think it's time to sell. This is Jordan Mason 2.0, except Kareem Hunt is worse because of his age, because he doesn't really have that longevity. I don't think Kareem Hunt is going to be on a team next year to where he's still a handcuff. I don't think Kareem Hunt has even the slightest opportunity to maybe sign somewhere else and be a starter or compete for a starting role. I think Jordan Mason, at least on the very surface level, is still going to be the handcuff to Christian McCaffrey, and potentially could get a job somewhere in a year or two. I don't remember what his contract situation is, but could get a job somewhere to compete for a starting role, a la Mike Davis or something like that, or Zach Moss. He could be the newer version of Zach Moss in a year or two. And I think that is in the cards for Jordan Mason. Maybe it's like a 10% probability that happens, but 10% is greater than 0% for Kareem Hunt, because I don't think Kareem Hunt has that at all with his age right now. So even if you're contending, I think it's time to sell off of Kareem Hunt. use him to upgrade, use him to move over to another player with more longevity at the running back position, sell him for a second-round pick, then use that second-round pick to upgrade, because then the second is going to be more marketable to the rebuilding teams. So sell him to another contender for a second-round pick, then sell that second to a rebuilder for a different running back, upgrade off of him over to another running back. I think it's just time to sell Kareem Hunt because Isaiah Pacheco is probably going to be coming back soon. And I think they're going to be in a really gross 50-50 split, or worst case scenario for Kareem Hunt. Pacheco comes back and Hunt dissolves into nothing. So your clock is ticking on Hunt. I think it's time to sell him. Steelers and Commanders game. This is the first of, I think, 3 games that I don't really care about from this past week, that I didn't really learn anything much from. I absolutely care about this game because Steelers, woo, that was terrible. Anyway, we're winning the Super Bowl this year. But I didn't really learn anything from this game because I don't know why I didn't change it, because it was an absolute smackdown. But anyway, I didn't learn anything from this game. Pickens is amazing. Continue to buy him. McLaurin continues to do well with Jaden Daniels. Even in a bad Jaden Daniels game, McLaurin really did well with 5 for 115. Najee is a playoff sell player. I'm going to have other videos talking about playoff buys and sells for Dynasty. Najee is going to be in the sell video. And please come back, Brian Robinson. I really miss you. And Austin Eckler's doing well, but those points could be yours and not Austin Eckler's if you came back. So continue to buy George Pickens, though. That's number 1. And we're winning the Super Bowl, by the way. I didn't change the absolute smackdown thing. But again, another game that I didn't really learn anything from because this game sucked. This game was so bad. TJ Hawkinson at least is back, so that's good for everybody that held on to him or bought him low. Hawk is in every week starting tight end now. Sam Darnold is starting to show regression over the past couple of weeks, especially against a really good in a good matchup against a really bad Jags defense. I thought he would have been a lot better. So it kind of sucked that he wasn't. And then on the Jaguar side of the ball, Mac Jones is probably going to wreck the Jaguars for fantasy football for the remainder of the year. Hopefully Trevor Lawrence comes back, but I've seen the talks and the rumors that he could be looking at surgery to end his season. He won't be playing this week, so we're going to get another Mac Jones game this week. Maybe next week. We'll have to see. But basically with Mac Jones playing, I think BTJ is unstartable. Travis Etienne is unstartable. Tank Bigsby got hurt, but with Travis Etienne in, I think Bigsby is still kind of unstartable. Ingram is fine because he's, if he has 4 catches for 40 yards, that's still fine for a tight end. So Ingram is really the only guy that I think I'd be looking to start, but it is rough without Trevor Lawrence in. Mac Jones is not it. And another game that I just didn't learn anything from, and once again did not change the absolute smackdown part, but I did not learn anything from this game because everybody did exactly basically what we thought was going to happen. Bijan was really good. He's the Dynasty RB1. Drake London is really good. He's a Dynasty wide receiver 1, not the wide receiver 1. Like Bijan is the Dynasty RB1. London is a Dynasty wide receiver 1. Kyle Pitts was fine. Darnell Mooney was okay. And that was basically it on the Falcons side of the ball. All the top guys did okay to really well. Nobody else really did anything. Saints side of the ball, Kamara is a huge winner without Chris Olave. I feel like we already knew that. But everybody else after that is really not – you're not starting anybody else. Maybe you could start Taysom Hill, but I think you're calling your shot on that one. I don't feel comfortable starting him. I don't even really feel comfortable starting Derek Carr without Chris Olave. MVS had his big game, 3 for 102. We talked about him in the waiver wire video earlier this week, but you're not starting MVS either. I think you're starting Alvin Kamara, and that's basically it from the New Orleans Saints side of the ball. So I didn't really learn anything from this game. Niners and the Buccaneers. Niners side of the ball. Welcome back, Christian McCaffrey. 16.7 PPR points, 13 carries for 39 yards, 6 receptions for 68 yards. Football is just better when Christian McCaffrey is playing, man. It's so much nicer and so much better whenever he's on the field. By the way, any possibility of CMC potentially getting eased in, getting fewer touches to keep him healthy, that did not happen. He had 19 touches to Mason and Garando's combined 2 touches. So of the 21 running back touches that the Niners running backs had this week, McCaffrey got 19 of them. That's like 90%, maybe more than 90% of the running back share was Christian McCaffrey. So he is it, man. I wouldn't be concerned whatsoever about them easing him in. I think the only thing that it's not really concerned, but something that you just have to take note of if you have Christian McCaffrey or you bought Christian McCaffrey for this reason, for him coming back and him being elite, is that I think he's going to he'll take another week or two maybe to get in and return into Christian McCaffrey, to get into NFL shape. I watched the 13 carries that he had. I went back and watched the all 22 film on him. The first 3 carries, he looked phenomenal, but he really didn't do anything more than what was already blocked for him. And that was kind of the story of the game for me, was that I was watching him and I was just like, he hit his hole. He looked good, accelerating through the hole, but that's kind of just what he did. Like maybe he made a guy miss on 1 or 2 of his carries, but he basically just got what was blocked for him and fell forward when he was tackled, or tried to fight to fall forward and fight for extra yards when he was uh, getting tackled. There was one run on the goal line, not really on the goal line. It was on like the 10-yard line that I questioned CMC's vision on. And maybe that's just like a getting back into game shape or game form kind of thing, because it looked like, you can go back and watch the play. He was on the 10-yard line. Maybe I'll post it on Twitter. He was on the 10-yard line and he got the handoff and just kind of ran right through the guard and the tackle. But it seemed like he could have kicked it out really, really easily. There was a lot of green on the outside that he could have just kicked it out. He might have even scored potentially, but he would have probably gained at least 5 or 6 yards instead of like the 1 or 2 yards that he gained just trying to go through the hole. So I kind of questioned his vision on that one, but he probably, like I said, had just been following his blocks, following where the run was supposed to go. And that's kind of what it is in a Shanahan system. So he didn't look slow. He didn't look bad. He just looked like he himself was also trying to take it easy and just do what he needed to do. But 19 out of 21 running back touches, man, you can't really ask for anything more than that, especially when 6 of them are receptions. Phenomenal for fantasy football. 16.7 points without even scoring. That's a great debut for Christian McCaffrey after not playing at all with Achilles tendonitis. On the Buccaneers side of the ball, statistically, this was a really bad game for basically everybody except for Bucky Irving and Rachaad White, the running backs. Hopefully Evans is back after the bye week this week and points will return. Baker Mayfield had a much better day than he on film that he did statistically, but it just wasn't there for Cade Otton. It wasn't there for any of the other receivers, and he needs Mike Evans to come back. But the running backs still look good, so you're at least good there. Bills and Colts side of the ball now. On the Bills side, this is another offense, at least this week, that just did not have a good day statistically besides the running back, James Cook. Amari Cooper hasn't been playing. Keon Coleman hasn't been playing. And Dalton Kincaid got hurt this week. So Josh Allen didn't really have all that great of a game. Khalil Shakir was just kind of fine. But really it was James Cook, and they won because they had James Cook. That's essentially it. Colts side of the ball happened just this morning. Anthony Richardson has been named the starter once again. I made a Michael Scott joke, snip, snap. Well, reverse back from The Office. That's how I feel with Shane Steichen announcing who's the starting quarterback every single week. So we're back to Anthony Richardson. So we're here. This is really bad for Josh Downs. This is bad for Michael Pittman. It's probably neutral for Jonathan Taylor. I feel like I would prefer JT to still have Flacco because I think then he has a little bit more receiving upside. But from a rushing standpoint, I don't think this hurts Jonathan Taylor. I still think he's a top 10 back. But yeah, we're getting Anthony Richardson back. I think that kind of is what it is right now. Hopefully he does better and gain some value. I wouldn't be starting him. If you had Anthony Richardson, if you had anybody else, I would not be starting Anthony Richardson, but at least you're giving the opportunity now and hopefully for the remainder of the year for Richardson to really show if he can be a starter in the NFL and gain some dynasty value, or if he really is like actually not that good. Because I feel like that's another thing that Colts might be trying to do here is they realized that they weren't getting anywhere with Joe Flacco. Let's turn the keys back over to Anthony Richardson and actually see if this is a position that we need to address next year in the draft because of how bad the Colts have been playing. So I wonder if that's what they're doing with Richardson here. So hopefully if you still have Richardson, maybe now's a good time to sell. The whole situation's so weird. Patriots and the Bears now. I didn't even change the Bears. I just said, please play Jameis. Bad Addison. Patriots side of the ball. I did not change this at all. This whole slide, I didn't even change it. I did change it to the entire. I was going to talk about the entire offense on both of these, so just ignore everything else on this slide. Patriots side of the ball, not that great of a game. Chicago's defense is really good. Drake May still looks impressive, I think, despite playing against some good defenses and not really having weapons. Ramondre continues to be the RB1. That's just kind of it with the Patriots. The Bears side of the ball, hopefully the firing of Shane Waldron improves this offense. I think Matt Eberflus needs to be next, but they need a spark. They need something. I don't think it's Caleb Williams' fault because he's shown multiple times this year that he can be the franchise quarterback, and he's got the weapons to do it. I think they're all just being misused. They're all being miscasted. I saw a whole thread that I agreed with on how the Bears were operating and utilizing their wide receivers. The biggest differences for how they're utilizing DJ Moore last year compared to this year. They're using Keenan Allen in a different way. They're using Rome Odunze not in a smart way. All leads back to Shane Waldron, more or less. So hopefully with Shane Waldron out, and hopefully they can get a better offensive coordinator in here, maybe not this year, but next year, then that would be good for the Chicago Bears and for everybody else involved. But as of right now, I feel like everybody's basically a sit. And DeAndre Swift is a playoff sell. So spoiler alert on that one, like it was with Najee. Swift is also in that category. Okay. Titans and Chargers game. On the Titans side of the ball, speaking of this whole entire slide is all playoffs, playoff buys and sells. Calvin Ridley, man, 25.5 PPR points, 5 for 84 and 2, 9 targets for a 39% target share. He has been absolutely on fire without DeAndre Hopkins. I saw the fantasy footballers on Twitter. They tweeted out that since Nuke was traded, Ridley has a 34% target share, 44% yardage share. That's number 1 in the NFL. He is a major buy for contenders right now. He has a top 3 wide receiver schedule for the remainder of the year. He's been excellent without DeAndre Hopkins. He's done it with Mason Rudolph. He's done it with Will Levis. There it is, man. He might still be kind of up and down, but he's had 2 phenomenal games since Nuke was traded. 1 average game, I think, with like 10 or 11 PPR points. So Calvin Ridley is a really good buy right now for contenders looking for a playoff push or some extra wide receiver depth or an extra flex spot. Calvin Ridley, go buy him. On the other side of the ball, J.K. Dobbins we need to start having a conversation about J.K. Dobbins. 15 carries for 50 yards, 3 receptions for 5 yards. It's time to sell him too. He was a really fun story to start the year. He's been fine ever since. He's scoring touchdowns, so that's keeping him relevant enough. But he really hasn't gotten back to where he was at the very beginning of the year, which also, the very beginning of the year, he played the Panthers and the Raiders, 2 of the absolute worst run defenses in the league, 2 of the best matchups for running backs right now. The fact that he ate against both those guys, I think, is just telling of the fact that both those defenses are just so bad too. Dobbins is fine, but I think that I just kind of want to move off of him. He's been inefficient on the ground. He's been very inefficient through the air. It's been horrible. Gus Edwards is now back. He came back, had 10 carries to Dobbins' 15. Gus Edwards actually ran for 55 yards, so he outproduced Dobbins on his 5 fewer carries. And Dobbins just, I don't really think is all that great, which is sad. But I think a lot of that is just the fact that, he has an Achilles injury. He has an ACL injury. I think that's just kind of where we're at right now with J.K. Dobbins. I think that he is a playoff sell. His schedule is really rough as well. So if you can sell him, again, another guy that's going to be very specifically highlighted in a video and was highlighted on a 4for4 video that dropped today too. But sell J.K. Dobbins, man. I think it's time. I think he has enough value right now that you can definitely get something good for him. Eagles and Cowboys game. On the Eagles side of the ball, I don't really think there's all that much to talk about. I mean, Jalen Hurts is great. Saquon is elite. He's been getting tackled on the 1-yard line a lot too. So I don't know if that's just like a thing that happens to Eagles running backs now, but he could have had a lot more touchdowns, and Hurts is pushing his way into rushing touchdowns on the goal line, which is stealing from Saquon. But Saquon is still elite. AJ Brown is elite. Devonta Smith totally fine. That's the Philadelphia Eagles, man. That's their whole offense, and it's fine for fantasy football. It's more than fine for fantasy football. Cowboys side of the ball, got to talk about CeeDee Lamb here. 8 fantasy points, 6 for 21. Did have 10 targets, was a 30% target share. Almost had that touchdown that everybody has been talking about because of the sun shining into his eyes. He didn't even see it. So had he caught a touchdown, I think from a fantasy perspective, we wouldn't be really necessarily panicking, I think, about CeeDee Lamb. If he caught that touchdown, he would have 15 fantasy points. But because he didn't catch the touchdown, only at 21 yards, this sucks. But there is good and bad news here. Again, the good news, he had 10 targets that doubled everybody else on the team. Ferguson only had 5. I think Tolbert only had 5. and he had 6 receptions on those 10 targets. So that holds true that he is the alpha. He's going to get hyper targeted. It just might not be super great targets, or they might not be very efficient or very, you know, fantasy worthy targets if they're not super far downfield. If he's just catching them around the line of scrimmage, that's just kind of where we're at, which is where the bad news is. Only 21 yards. Touchdown opportunities are going to be tough to get to because his offense is probably going to suck. Cooper Rush, obviously, is not good. Maybe Trey Lance helps. I think Trey Lance, at least in San Francisco, showed the ability to push the ball downfield. So maybe with him having a bigger arm, more of a willingness to kind of throw it, or more opens up their playbook a little bit more because of his arm, because of his talent. Maybe Lance is better and helps out for fantasy football for CeeDee Lamb. Maybe he's, he comes in and he's just Jameis Winston, or maybe he's Jake Browning or something like that, that could at least push the ball downfield and give CeeDee Lamb some more opportunities to, instead of 6 for 21, is 6 for 60, and then we're better from a PPR standpoint because the yardage is better. And then maybe can score a touchdown once or twice over the following weeks. I think he's a hold right now. If you are trying to flip CeeDee Lamb as a contender, I would be trying to move over and get another elite guy. So I'd be trying to see how can you turn Lamb into Chase, turn Lamb into Amon-Ra, turn Lamb into Nico, turn Lamb into maybe AJ Brown, maybe Puka. Those would be the deals that I'd be trying to figure out what I could do with CeeDee Lamb. And I wouldn't be just like panic selling him right now because he's still CeeDee Lamb from a dynasty standpoint, still fantastic. But I'm fine with trying to pivot off of him from a contender standpoint because the end of season might be really, really rough. Something stuck. I have a wire stuck around my foot. There we go. The Jets and the Cardinals game. On the Jets side of the ball, the entire offense, man, this is probably the end of the Aaron Rodgers era in New York. This might be the end of Aaron Rodgers just in general in the NFL. I would not be surprised if he retires at the end of the year. He has not been, I have it in here, he has not been as bad as Brett Favre was in his final season, or as bad as Peyton Manning was in his final season statistically, but boy, it's felt that way. He's felt so, it's been so rough all year outside of like 1 or 2 games, especially that one game, the game that was 2 weeks ago, when Garrett Wilson had a monster game and Devonta Adams had a monster game. And it seemed like everything was going to click for the New York Jets and that the Adams and Rodgers connection was going to be great. But then they go on the road to Arizona and it's obviously not. So I don't know. I don't really know what to do here. Obviously, with Garrett Wilson, you're holding on to him because he's fantastic for Dynasty. With Breece Hall, you're holding on to him because he's great for Dynasty. But Rodgers and Adams, I think those guys could probably be sells, even as a contender. Rodgers especially. Adams is probably a good sell, even as a contender, just to get off of him and move over to somebody with a little bit more longevity. It's just that it's just so rough right now. You can't trust any New York Jet, really. Even Hall and Wilson, you can't really trust. I think you have to start those guys, but you can't really trust them, and that kind of sucks. On the Cardinals side of the ball, Trey Benson, 10 fantasy points, 10 attempts for 62 yards, 2 for 25. He looks good. This is actually the second week in a row that he's had a very good opportunity with James Conner healthy. He had 12 touches this week. He had 9 touches the week before, and he scored a touchdown the week before as well. He's kind of turning into what Braylon Allen was to start the year, or kind of like how Tyler Algier has kind of been with Bijan. Maybe not entirely has been with Bijan, but in some games how he's been with Bijan. But a lot more like how Braylon Allen was with Breece Hall earlier in the year. That Trey Benson is start a bowl if you really need somebody, especially with bye weeks and injuries and stuff like that. He is start a bowl if you really need somebody. But I think that really what this does for me from a dynasty standpoint is gives me a lot more confidence that if Trey Benson were to be handed the keys to the running back room next year, if James Conner were to walk in free agency and they hand the keys to Trey Benson, that he would be pretty good in that role. And the receiving upside is really nice too. 2 catches in his limited time is really nice to see, because we didn't really see that at Florida State. I think he was kind of like Kenneth Walker, that he could have been utilized more in college, and we shouldn't hold his limited receiving work in college against him, because I can think that he does it, and I think that he does it pretty well. It was just, does that translate, or is he utilized more as a first and second down back? But I think that the past 2 weeks have given me confidence that Benson's going to be good in a workhorse role, and he'll have a receiving work as well to go with it, kind of like what James Conner has had in as the RB1 in the Cardinals offense. And not to mention that for the remainder of the year, Trey Benson is a really good handcuff, one of the best handcuffs in the league too. So the buy window is absolutely starting to close. So if you're looking to buy Trey Benson, get on it because he's starting to do well. Lions and Texans game. I don't know what the heck this game was. This game was really weird. There was like 7 interceptions. 5 of them were from Goff. What the heck? But on the Lions side of the ball, to at least talk about Sam Laporta real quick, because he's the only guy of kind of interest to even talk about, because Amon-Ra was still good. Gibbs and Monty are still good. Jameson Williams, not good. But Sam Laporta, 15 fantasy points, 3 for 66 and a touchdown on 6 targets, 20% target share. He's been on an absolute roller coaster. If you look at his game log over the last weeks, it's like he's literally ping-ponging. He has, top 5 week, unstartable. Top 5 week, unstartable. Top 5 week. So this week is the unstartable week. So if the pattern continues with Sam Laporta, that's all subjective. There's literally nothing to that other than the fact that he's been ping-ponging. But he's been super frustrating. It's been very weird. It's been nice to see him get more involved over the past couple of weeks. I think some of that was due to Jameson Williams being suspended. Maybe some of it, I think, in this past game was that Goff had to throw the ball a little bit more. Goff has only thrown the ball more than 25 times 3 times this year. He has a game with 28 pass attempts, with 30 pass attempts, and a game with 50. In those 3 games, Laporta has 3, 5, and 6 targets. That 6th target was the one this past weekend. So they haven't been throwing it a lot, and I think that that's really hurt Sam Laporta this year. But in the games when they do throw more, then Laporta has been fine, or at least is getting targets enough to show the ability to be fine. But I think as of right now, he's just a touchdown-dependent guy until he shows otherwise. If you have other starters, you don't need to rely on Sam Laporta every week. Like if you have Cade Otton, I might start Cade Otton over Laporta. If you have Ingram or Njoku or any other kind of good startable tight end, I might look to start him over Sam Laporta. But if you're just relying on Sam Laporta and your next best guy is like, Isaiah Likely or somebody like that, then you just got to start him. But it's been rough. He's definitely not been what you want him to be, but he's still young. He still has a tight end 1 overall season under his belt that we can fall back on for a little bit too. We just need the situation to kind of open up in the Lions to not absolutely dominate every single team that they face right now and dominate on the ground so well too. Then hopefully they throw a little bit more, then Laporta does it better. On the Texans side of the ball, quick story, nothing really great happened. Stroud has not been good without Nico Collins, and Tank Dell is not a wide receiver 1, so we need Nico Collins to come back. Mixon has been great. He wasn't all that efficient against the Lions defense, kind of as to be expected. The Lions run defense is really good, but still continues to get a boatload of volume, still continues to finish as a fantasy RB1. Joe Mixon is fantastic. Continue buying him if you can as a contender. We got a John Mechie sighting, so that was really fun. But I think with Nico Collins back this week, hopefully Stroud elevates a little bit too. Nico, obviously, for those of you that have been waiting for Nico to come back, that's going to be great. I don't think Mechie's really going to be much of anything moving forward, and hopefully Tank Dell does better when he falls back into that kind of wide receiver 2 role. So he's not a wide receiver 1. So with Nico coming in, drawing more defensive attention to his side, hopefully Tank Dell can do a little bit better. And especially if Stroud does better too with Nico back. More sustained drives, more touchdown opportunities. That's that. And then finally, the Monday Night Football game. Dolphins side of the ball, it's kind of the same story as the Texans. It's just like this offense isn't clicking right now, even with Tua back. Tyreek hasn't been doing well. He did catch a touchdown, but he only had like 3 catches. Waddle had a fantastic first drive and then didn't do anything for the rest of that game. I'm definitely not salty about that because I bet on Waddle over 3.5 receptions. He ended the game with 3 after having 2 on the first drive. Whatever. Achane continues to get a bunch of work, so that's great. But I feel like the Dolphins game has to come at some point that I'm just holding on to everybody. I don't think you can sell low on Tyreek. I don't think that's smart. I wouldn't really look to sell low on Jalen Waddle. If you can pivot to a different guy, like if you can pivot from Waddle over to George Pickens or Waddle over to Zay Flowers or Waddle over, add something to move up to DK Metcalf. That's what I would do. But I wouldn't really like try to pivot off of Waddle for some other guy that production is not really going to be there, or you're hoping the production is there, because we've seen Jalen Waddle be really, really good. We just need this offense to start clicking again. And I think the same goes for Tyreek. Nobody that you're selling him for, I think, even has close to the upside that Tyreek has on a weekly basis as a contender. And even if you thought you were a contender this year and you're out of the playoffs right now because you had Tyreek Hill, I would not sell him now. I would wait until he has that big game to then sell Tyreek Hill, or I'd even take him into next year. If you're a rebuilder or reloader and you have Tyreek, if you can't sell him this year, I would take him into next year and wait until this whole entire offense just hits reset in 2025 and hopefully does better with Tyreek. On the Rams side of the ball, to close this out, Puka Nacua, man, 18.8 PPR points, 9 for 98, 14 targets for a 30% target share. He doubled Cooper Kupp's targets. Kupp only saw 7 targets, was basically just as good from a receiving stat line as Puka Nacua, but Puka, 14 targets, man. I think he is going to enter that tier 1 of wide receivers. Like I said, I dropped my wide receiver rankings video last week. Puka was in that tier 2, but I think, and I even said in that video, that if Puka had been playing the entire year, that he would be in that tier 1. He's been the exact same player as he was last year in his historic rookie season. And even in his limited playing time this year, he's still been really good. Since returning from injury, he had 7 for 106 in his first game back, then 1 for 11. That was a game that he got suspended in. He only played 35% of snaps, 1 catch for 11 yards. Did have 4 targets, but he got ejected, so he didn't play the full game. Played like a third of the game. And then this past week, Monday night, 9 for 98. So his 17-game pace, just from the 3 weeks that he's been back, 153 for 98 for 1,200 and 0. 153 targets, 98 receptions, 1,200 yards, and 0 touchdowns because he hadn't scored. But obviously, he would score touchdowns over the course of 17 games. 153 targets, though, 100 receptions, 1,200 yards. That is phenomenal. That's a phenomenal stat line from basically the last 3 weeks since he's come back from injury. And again, that includes a game where he was ejected in and only played a third of the game. So if you give him a full game's worth of stats in that one, even if it was like 4 for 50, he could have, that pace is going to jump up dramatically as well. That I think that he would enter tier 1 and probably might be in tier 1 next offseason if he finishes the year really, really strong. I think that he's going to enter tier 1 by the end of the year if he continues playing like this, for sure. So if you bought low on Puka Nacua, congratulations. If you can still buy low on Puka right now, I would still actively be looking to do that, especially if people think that he's more of like a back end top 10 guy. I think he's closer to being a top 5 guy. He's fantastic. And he's still super young, and he's really good, man. He's really, really good. So that's where we're at. Yep. That is it. So appreciate everybody for sticking around. If you stuck around this whole entire time for the past 43 minutes on this, but those are my Dynasty lessons learned from week 10. Going to try to continue to do this every single week as we close out the year. So I appreciate you guys sticking with me, even though I didn't get one for you last week, but appreciate everybody. And I will catch you guys Friday for the AMA at 12 p.m. Eastern time. And of course, we'll try to do this again next week for week 11 Dynasty lessons learned next Wednesday as well. But until the next video, guys, catch you later. Peace.